Ladies and gentlemen, this is Deliver It, your Agile Product Owners podcast. My name is Cory Bryan, and her name, once again,
Kimberly Andrikaitis.
Kim Andrikaitis.
That is I.
What's up?
What's up?
You know, I'm very happy.
I am too.
Yeah?
Why are you happy?
I'm happy because I'm kind of chill, I'm kind of relaxed, I'm kind of, mellowing out.
I haven't seen Mellow Cory in years.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool.
Welcome back, Mellow Cory.
Thank you very
Where have
much.
you been for the last couple of years?
Well, he's been away. I had, as I was exiting my current job, one of the things they made me do is uninstall MS Project.
Really? So they can get the license back?
Yeah. So I did, and it was glorious. And I tweeted out something about, the favorite part is uninstalling MS Project. And MS Project apparently has a Twitter account.
Uh-huh.
An actual Microsoft person. They're like, "Oh, sorry, Cory. Can you tell us what you like?"
So they reached out to you.
They reached out to me. I'm like, "Well, be more agile. Stop with the Gantt charts."
They're like, I hate Gantt
I
charts.
just can't stand any Gantt charts.
Did you have to do an exit interview?
No. But
Really?
I did that. And then the other thing that made me happy was last week we got the first install for the project I'm working with the students at NC State. We got the first install here, and it's up, and I did a demo, and they're off and running with it, and they got one more month to finish it up, but the users actually have it and can give feedback on it. So that made me happy that it was actually here and it worked, and it's not, you got the final stuff that I want in it. And that'll be somebody else that shepherds that through, but they're so close, and it's so nice to see that done. So
That's exhilarating.
I like those two things.
Well, I'm happy that Happy Mellow Cory is back.
And I've had a vacation. So vacations
You
always
have
help.
had I know, and I've got one coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very excited. I'm going to Taiwan.
Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. I'm very excited. So we're leaving at the end of the week.
Very good. And you're going to borrow my book.
Yes. Did you bring it?
I did bring it. It's
Yay!
right here. So I finished 2 books in the last 2 weeks.
Of course you did. You're such an overachiever. You're a bookworm.
It's what happens when you're on vacation.
I know. That's the only time I read.
One of the books. So when Bob and I talked, we talked about the product owner relating it to a general manager of a sports team and looking for general manager books. I found 2. I read one of them. It's actually by, and it was more timely. That's the reason I picked it. Dayton Moore, who's the GM of the Kansas City Royals, who just won the World Series.
Oh, yay.
Last year,
Dayton Moore.
they got to the World Series and lost in Game 7. So they lost in the final game. Right? But it's how he built that organization and his leadership strategies. It's a lot about baseball. So if you don't like baseball, you're not going to like this book. It's a very personal story. So a lot of him is in there, and then a lot about leadership. Things are in there. And one of the things he had about leadership, I really liked is he said, the biggest mistake we make as leaders is to take out our frustration on the group. If it doesn't benefit the person or the situation, shut up.
I think that's a very good thing for you to keep in mind.
Yes, it is.
Maybe you want to print that and leave it in front of you.
Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah. But it's a very good book. It's called More Than a Season. It came out last year, Dayton Moore. And there was an interesting thing. I read that on my Kindle, on my iPad Kindle app. Mm-hmm. 2 interesting things about reading on a Kindle. One, it told you how close you were to being done, which was interesting. You're 41% through the book.
Oh.
Okay. The other thing that it did that I didn't expect was it showed me how fast I was reading, and it told me how much longer I had to read that book. So it figured out very cool that I was reading at whatever words per minute, and that the book had this many words and this many pages, and that I had, 2.5 hours or whatever to read the book.
So did it make you want to beat your time?
It was like, how does it know? Can I get it to go faster?
It's kind of like, those driving apps. It's like, it's going to take you 28 minutes to get there. I'm like, no, I'm going to get there in 25. You watch me. Right? Did you kind of think like, I'm going to say, no, not 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes.
It was interesting because I was on a plane and I was driving and I was doing all kinds of stuff. I was thinking, okay, I got 30 more minutes till the plane lands. How much more can I read before the plane
See, that would have spazzed me out. I've been like, I can beat this.
But that was really cool.
That's awesome.
That's a very cool feature. And then the other book that I read that was recommended to me is by Lisa Atkins called Coaching Agile Teams.
That's the one I get to borrow.
This is the one you get to borrow. Now, the other thing that this is an amazing book, fantastic book. when Bob was here and we talked about that product owner 2.0, that there is no next level. I think this is something that, aside from the stories and the backlog and everything else, this is something that's going to go very high on my recommended book list, because this is for Agile coaches, but it's also how to improve the teams and how to improve yourself and how to improve everybody around you.
So it's not just the Agile coach that gets something out of it.
It's not. And that's what I got out of it. There's a couple pages on product ownership, and I really like how they talk about teaching the product owner role. But it's very good information just to, one of the things that I'm always interested in is how can we make the team better?
Yes.
How can the team get better so we can deliver better results? Part of that is I got to get better. The product owners got to get better. The Agile managers have got to get better. The team members themselves have to get better. And how can I help them do that? Or how can I support that? This is a way. When you read through these, there's some strategies and some ideas. And the big part about it is getting the hell out of the way.
Right.
It's let them figure it out. Agile is about teams being empowered to do things, and let them do that.
Is this assuming that you have mature teams?
No.
Okay.
It's not.
So this could be for
it can be for both.
Brand new.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some things that she talks about the product owner, and I think it's real cool to distill it down to how to teach product owners or how to coach product owners. One of the things is to help them see that their primary function is as a business value driver. What's the business value? What's the most important thing we could be working on right now?
They're driving the business value bus.
Analogy. Okay. The wheels on the bus. I'm not going to sing it. So business value driver, daily decision maker. You're always going to be making decisions as a product owner, multiple decisions, and you have to be comfortable with that and available to do that. I think is the other thing. Vision keeper. So where are we going with this product? What's the big goal? What are we trying to solve? What can everybody get behind as a vision for this product? A heat shield, protect the team. A lot of that falls to the Scrum Master, but the product owner can help with that by saying, we're working on this for this sprint. We're not going to pick up those other things until we get to the next sprint. But I can talk about them as a product owner, but doing that shields the team from changing directions or not finishing something and having to start on something else. So I think that's good. And the other thing that the product owner needs to understand is that they are ultimately responsible. There we go with the single ringable neck. Right. And I think I like that concept that they're the ultimate responsible one. And then how do you get teams to be better? How do you get teams to deliver more awesome products? And that's what the bulk of the book is. And I really like that.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to reading it.
Yeah. So I definitely would recommend that. And I want my copy back.
Did you, highlight key areas? Am I going to go find your little notes while I read through? No,
I don't do that in books. I just write on index cards.
Oh.
When I'm taking notes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I won't write in your book then.
Okay. Thank you. So our topic today, I'm not going to play the little bumper music.
Why not? You don't have it ready.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
It's my last episode. I want to hear the bumper.
All right. There you
go. That was hot.
So today, this is one of your suggestions,
yes.
Kim. We're going to talk about product owners being remote.
Right.
Not remote control. It's a bad joke. I apologize for that joke.
That was almost as bad as mine. My jokes.
So product owners who are remote or product owners that are remote. So whether the team is remote from you or whether you have team members that are remote from each other.
Yep.
That's the basic talk.
So distributed teams, essentially.
Yeah. A lot about distributed teams.
Yeah. I think this is important that we talk about this because as we move forward in our careers, in different companies, a lot of people are using, contractors and they're being outsourced and those your team members. So some of the things that we can do when you have your, employees or your team with you, you can't quite do when they're, thousands of miles away in 6 hours.
Right.
Away.
So let's talk about the different setups and the different pluses and minuses. We'll go through that. Yeah. So the obvious best thing is to have everybody in the same room at the same time. Working together, that's the best.
That's optimal. Sure.
Right, that's the best. If you can get that, then good.
Then yay for you.
Yay for you. Pat yourself on the back. Write down how you did it. Sit it in. So that's the best thing. The next best thing, I think, is to have everybody but the product owner working together. So if you have a team and that team is remote, does that team include front-end developers, back-end developers, testers, Scrum Master? Can you put them wherever they are as a team, and then you're the only one who's remote? That's probably the next best thing.
Yep. I agree with that.
Third, or worst, is everybody's everywhere. So you've got the product owner, wherever you are, Scrum Master is in New York, you've got 2 developers in London, you've got a tester in India, and you've got a designer in Germany or something like that. Sure. That's the worst type of setup. Now, that's not to say that you can't make that work.
You can make it happen.
There are several companies that's how they work. Everybody's everywhere. They don't have an office. They just work distributedly like that or remote. So it's possible. I think it's a very special type of individual and team that's capable of working like that in an agile fashion. Yeah,
I agree with that. It's definitely difficult because you miss out on a lot of, it's just interactions.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the good and the bad.
Right.
But it doesn't mean it can't be done. It's just a little bit more of a challenge.
Right. And one of the things to think about as well is if you have a team that's remote and you're the only one as a product owner that's not there, is it enough to have a proxy? Do you need to have a proxy product owner there or somebody that you can train to be the product owner for that team? Or are you still needed kind of to act as a stakeholder, as a chief product owner, or whatever you want to call yourself or act like? But is there a way that we can get that team better integrated with a product owner?
Yep.
So those are the 3 main ways we see people build teams and operate.
There's also the concept too of having the Scrum Master and the product owner in one location and then having the rest of the team spread out.
Yeah.
Which is not the worst.
No.
That's, I think it's next worst.
I think if you have those 2 roles separate instead of one person doing both, I think that's fine.
Well, that's what I'm saying. 2 separate people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So
some of the challenges, right, as a product owner is you still have the same job. You still have your same responsibilities, your same duties. But it's just more difficult.
Yeah. Everything is going to be much harder as a remote product owner.
Right. And because you really have to figure out how to stay engaged with the team.
Yeah. I think that's the key is the engagement. Everybody has to understand the same things the same way, but how can you do that when you can't go tap them on the shoulder or talk to them, go into the lunchroom or something?
Right. Which leads to communications. So you need to have more and more communications.
Yeah, you've got to put more effort into communicating vision, communicating stories, communicating side conversations that you have with somebody or one-on-one conversations you have with somebody. You have to relay that to a bunch of other people.
Right. I mean, you're definitely missing out on those, water cooler conversations.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But again, it's a challenge and anything can really be overcome. There's definitely more effort into, like you just said, sharing the vision, having that understanding. And as a product owner, I think you just have to be more flexible.
Yeah, you've got to be. So as product owners, we need to be available for the team. If the team's not there and the team is in the ether and they're working, across time zones or whatever else, we have to be able to be available to respond to them. So we have to say, if this guy's going to ask a question, we know we need to have office, question hours. Maybe you have question hours or maybe you have time where you say, hey guys, I'm here. Normally I would go sit with the team. If I'm not already sitting with the team, let's say I'm remote, I'm working on a different floor. Let's say I come up an hour a day and I sit with the team, and that's part of how I try to engage with the team. If I'm remote at like a different city, then maybe I dial in, open a WebEx or do something and say, hey, I'm here. If anybody's got any questions, now's the time that we've set aside for this.
Yeah. That's a good idea. Traveling's always helpful too. So if you can travel to the sites, once a quarter, once a month, whatever it ends up being, then at least you can meet with your team members face to face. Talking about team members, so hiring them is definitely a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. They have to be willing to work in a remote fashion. They have to be comfortable working, and ideally they would excel at that type of environment to work where they know how to keep themselves engaged when they don't have people to talk to in an office or something like that.
And you also have to consider the cultural fit. It's hard to figure that out over a phone interview, for example, rather than having that person next to you where you can kind of see, are they laid back? Do they seem high energy? And, that kind of information doesn't really come across so well if it's not face to face.
Yeah. So yeah, it's got to be a special individual or a special type of way that they've learned to work in a remote setting.
Mm-hmm. But, the processes will stay mostly the same.
Yeah. So the framework we're going to use is going to be the same. Mm-hmm. The kind of the values of the Scrum principle or the Agile values, the Agile principles, we're going to keep those. Those are going to be the same. We're going to do the same things the same way. We're going to have our story discovery sessions. We're going to have our demos. We're going to have our stand-ups. We're going to do all those things like we're supposed to do. We just may have to change them slightly because we've got remote team members or remote teams or you're remote.
Yeah. It's time to get creative.
Yeah. Find what works.
Right. Find what works. And like you said, the process stays the same and the work needs to remain visible. Yeah.
So it's easier. And again, if there's a remote team and you're the only one that's not there, then it's easier for them to continue to work off a storyboard or to work off some type of physical thing where they can see everything. If not, then you've got to have digital versions of those, backups of those, where you, the team, the stakeholders, the other managers, the company can see all the things that you're doing, and make them still visible and still accessible, where the team knows, if I want to see the backlog or if I want to see the roadmap, more importantly, if I want to see the roadmap, this is where I go to do that.
Right. Go to SharePoint to look at the roadmap. I look at Jira for the backlog, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yep. But there are some good.
Yeah. There are some ways that you can do this better, that you can start this off right. So Bob had a good article that I use as a reference for this, where we want to make sure that when we're kicking off a team, when we're kicking off a new effort, that we get everybody together. Bring everybody in if possible, or you go there. However you're set up, get as many people together as you can to start working, because that way we start to establish the principles, the values that we're going to work on, start to understand everybody's working style, which again is what a lot of what Lisa's book goes into, is understanding people's working style and how to operate as a team, to collaborate. You build that together, and then you go back to your place and you've got that established connections with everybody.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
So that's all good. So start with that if you can, and then try to get together as often as possible. So if the product owner needs to travel out at the beginning of every sprint, hey, that'd be great to the team. If you can only bring everybody together maybe every year, then do that. But as much as you can, get everybody together so that they're on the same page, so they understand how they're working together.
And they can get to know each other.
Yes. Yeah. Likes, dislikes, goals.
Right.
Vision, experience.
They can establish those bonds and friendships and all the rest of that.
Yeah. So one of the other things, so if you can get together for sprint planning, then, if you've got sprint planning, retro, and demo on the same day, which is usually what I've done, is I've had all three of those ceremonies on the same day, then that's a good day to travel. Come in, close that last sprint, do the retrospective with your team, and then start the next sprint, get everybody on the same page, make sure that your questions are answered so the team understands what they're going to be building for the next sprint. And then you go wherever you're going to go, back to your office, back to your city, or back to your floor,
right.
Wherever it is.
Yep. Good idea.
And then there's a very interesting thing I've seen. There's a lot of telepresence stuff that you can get. You can get cameras, you can get systems built into the walls to be telepresence. One of the cool things you can get is a robot on a stick.
I've seen that.
Have you seen those things?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I want one of those things.
Little face that travels around.
They're about $2,000. It's an iPad stuck on a stick.
It's that expensive?
Yeah, it ain't cheap.
Good Lord.
Not yet.
Right.
But it'll come down. But it's basically an iPad or a Kindle Fire or something stuck on a stick that's got wheels on it that rolls around the office, and it raises and lowers, which is really cool. And it's your face on Skype or FaceTime or whatever. You're talking to the team.
So are you controlling it?
Yes. Huh. You're actually driving it from the app that lets everybody see your face, and you see everybody as you're, rolling around the office.
So you could just roll up to somebody and just stand there and stare at them until they turn around.
You can roll up and, yeah. I mean, you can't tap them on the shoulder. Not yet. But you can roll up behind them and, excuse me. Hi.
I kind of want one.
Can somebody move the sticky for me? Cause I have no arms.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Those are really cool. But again, if the team is together and you're remote as a product owner, yeah, invest in one of those, because those are really cool. Really cool.
So I don't know if you noticed this, but the lights are going out on the other side of the room.
We got to wave our arms.
It's kind of freaking me out.
I think we'll be okay.
I mean, is this room haunted?
No.
It's a haunted room?
No.
Haunted conference room?
No.
All right. So one thing that is more than just a challenge, but we don't love is the fact that there's more meetings.
Yeah. So we know we're going to have to communicate more. We don't want to communicate in meetings as much as possible. So it's a bad sign if you have to start having more and more meetings because of whatever. Especially if this turns into a status meeting type thing. Definitely don't want those.
Right.
Or status reports or anything else. Like just be done with those. Mm-hmm. So those are bad signs. Something's going wrong with your process if you're having to do status reports and Gantt charts and that type of stuff.
Well, yes. And that doesn't mean that it's only because you have, people that aren't co-located. That can happen with your team members that are right there.
It can, yeah. It's more likely to occur, I think, with remote because you don't have the connectedness. And
do you think that there's this tendency to end up micromanaging because you're not there physically with the team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of, you put a lot of trust in the team in agile context, right? We trust them to do things. We ask them to do a lot of things and they do it. If you can't interact with them and see them do it, it takes a lot to build that trust, even when you're sitting with them. But if you're not sitting with them and you don't see burn down charts or you don't see working software, you don't see, communication around that, then you start to wonder, well, what's going on?
Yeah. It's like seeing a task that the same task is there on day one.
Yeah.
And then day two, it's still there and maybe it has another hour on it. It's like, what's going on with this task?
And that's the same problem whether you're there or not. It's just when you're there, you can very easily go and say, hey guys, I noticed that task has been there for the last 3 days. Tell me about that or what's going on with that.
Right.
When you're remote, you're trying to get anybody to please respond to me. Somebody. Yes. And it may be one of these things where again, somebody said, well, I was going to work on that, but I thought somebody else had told me they were going to work on it. So I didn't do anything.
And you definitely can't just make assumptions.
No.
Right. You can't just be like, oh, they suck.
Yeah.
They're not doing any work. They're watching, Vimeo all day long.
Yeah. But again, it's one of these things where it's harder when you're not together.
It is.
You have to do more when you're not together.
Right. And then we talk about a dysfunctional team or a functional team. But in this case, it's definitely, you're missing those aspects to make it a very functional team. Yeah.
The cohesiveness of the group really starts to break down. And that's one of the things that the 5 dysfunctions of the team, another good,
that's a good book.
It is a really good book. The basis is trust, right?
Yes.
You have to be able to trust people to do things and to do what they said they're going to do. And so that if trust breaks down or if any of the other ones start to break down, then you really start to, okay, how can we get this back? How can we resolve these issues that the team has because they're not interacting with each other enough or they're not sharing the same vision or they're not doing something else.
Yeah. But it's getting under the covers to understand what's really going on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So one of the big things is about tools. So we're not together. We have to use tools more than we would if we're all together in the same room. So as much as I like physical storyboards and having those things, if you don't have teams, then you don't have really, or if you don't have a co-located team, you really don't have a physical storyboard you can use. So you have to use some type of tool. So the tools that we're going to talk about are actually tools not about process. Forget the process tools. I don't care. You can use Jira, you can use Rally, you can use whatever you want to. I don't care. I want to talk about the collaboration tools because that's the more important part of this is how can we still get everybody to communicate and understand the same things so that when we use those tools for our agile process, then everything flows. So tools like we got to have a video conference. I have to see you. You have to see me. We have to see when Kim's looking up at the ceiling because she doesn't understand something, right?
Or is frustrated.
Right?
Yes.
That needs to be seen so that I go, oh, I understand Kim's frustrated because she's looking at the ceiling. Or, I understand that, this person has a very visual sense. They want to be able to talk and communicate. And it's a lot easier when you can do that on video conference than you can when you're just talking on the phone.
Yes, I agree. I think video conference is great. And I think WebEx, right? The idea of turning your camera on and seeing everybody's face is fantastic.
And WebEx is good because you can also share the screen. So if I want to work with somebody, then I want to be able to share what I'm seeing or they want to share what they're seeing so we can work on it together. Whether the teams are pairing or whether the tester is working with the developer or whether you're answering a question for the tester, let's get on a WebEx session. Let's pull something up. Let's look at it together so we can actually see each other and we actually see what the other person sees.
Yeah. And I don't think I absolutely think that we need to, not disregard the power of seeing somebody via the camera. Because I could say something that might sound like I have an attitude about it, but I'm actually laughing when I say it and I'm smiling and they can look at me and go, okay, she's just joking.
Yeah.
Whereas if I didn't have that, they could just take my tone and be like, oh, she's a bitch,
Yeah. And that's important. And again, if we've gotten together and we have established at least, let's say a week or 2 weeks of, I know when she's smiling and I know when she's talking. Then when we go back and we're looking at the video, it's a lot easier to pick up those cues, those visual cues to go, oh, I see what she's doing now.
Yeah. And not only that, but you can see body language. You can see when people are leaning in and then they're engaged versus step back and they're not, or when they're looking at the camera or not looking at their other monitor and doing work. Mm-hmm. So you can see all that. So it's very powerful.
Yeah. So WebEx, very good for screen sharing. I think some way to have and not only one-on-one video conversations, but group conversations. So let's say everybody's in a different city and we have to do our stand-up on a video chat or a group chat.
Yep.
Let's find a way to get, all 5 people, all 7 people, in a chat where we can look at the board and see each other, put us in a Brady Bunch box. I said that wrong. Put us in a box where everybody can see everybody and then see the things go around as we talk. So that's much better if we can do that.
We use Google Hangouts. There's one thing that we use for one of our stand-ups.
Yeah.
Because I've got team members for one of my teams. I've got Poland, New York, and Raleigh. Mm-hmm. So we use Google Hangouts and that seems to work really well.
Yeah. That works well. The other thing that you can do with group chats or with just video in general, is if you got a remote team and you're the only remote person as a product owner, you can set up a camera and we can just have, one pointed at the board so we can see the board moving. So we can see, what's the general feel of the team? How is the team behaving? How are they interacting with each other? How can they interact with me as the product owner more? Or how can I, not, if I can't roll over to them on my little stick robot.
$2,000 stick robot.
Maybe there's a terminal set at the board where people can come up and while they're grabbing a task, they ask me a question. That's great. Let's leave that always on.
Right.
So that there's communication if there needs to be. And there probably will need to be.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. And also another thing I really like for collaboration is something that Heinrich made called Web Whiteboard.
That's pretty cool. I was playing with that the other day.
So you and I get on a browser. I share a link with you. You open that link in your browser and we're drawing on a whiteboard together.
Yeah.
Or you see what I draw and I see what you comment on. So as we're sketching something out, which I'm very visual, I like to draw on boards and windows and other things that are erasable. I like to go through that process and being able to do that and have everybody else see it, I think is very powerful.
Agreed. One other tool that, I was thinking about for retrospectives, actually there's 2 tools that I use. I use, the Note app and I use, Trello. And both of those things work really well for retrospectives. Trello more so because they can vote using these fun little icons.
Yeah.
So they can put a little spaceship on their voting, but those seem to work really well.
Yeah.
And again, the collaborative, everybody can see what's going on. You can all, enter your notes in at the same time. And it's been working very well.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing for tools is, whatever tool you've got, use it, but focus more. If you're going to spend money on collaboration tools. Don't spend money on Rally or version 1 or something like that where if you don't have the collaboration tools already established, get those better. We used Blue Jeans for a while, which was a great video conferencing thing that pieced together Skype and Google Hangouts and internal stuff. Basically bridged that gap and it was so easy to use. And we loved it, but it was one of those things where that let us collaborate more when we had remote people. So whatever you can do tool wise to do that, I think that's best.
Yeah. I think the key is communication. That's always the key.
Keep the communication up, keep the practices, adapt them to your environment that you've got so that everybody stays informed, but keep doing the same thing that you would be doing even if they were right beside you.
And try not to get frustrated.
Yeah, it's going to take some extra effort and some extra patience.
But it can be done.
It can be done. Yes. And do it. So we'll link 2 articles. One's by Mark Kilby, a really good one, that talked about tools come last, and very, very persuasively, put that in there. And then Bob has a great article from a couple years ago when he's approached about, well, if we're a distributed team, do we have to do X? And the answer is yes, you have to do X. You have to do it differently, maybe. But yes, you still have to do it. If we have remote teams, do we still have to do retrospectives?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Do we still have to do sprint planning with everybody? Yes, you do.
I have to
you just have to find a different way to do it.
It's a little bit difficult to get people engaged in those types of ceremonies. With retrospectives, it's pretty easy for people to just kind of hide and not really participate. So I know I struggle with how do I get more out of the team during the retrospective, for example.
Yep. So it's good. Really good articles there. So there we go. And now
it stopped so abruptly.
I know. I need better ones. You have no idea how long I've spent looking for things that I like, and I still don't like them. So now we go to our questions and feedback, which can be sent to we have an email address, deliveritcast@gmail.com, and Twitter @deliveritcast. If you want to share the show around, please feel free to do that. We're on iTunes and now Google Podcast Directory.
Cool.
And we're still accepting admissions for your co-host search. There you go. Now, for the questions today, I want to tell everybody that after we recorded our last show, Kim had some questions for me, and we spent a good amount of time just talking about product ownership and coaching and a couple other things. And it was so much fun. And I hate that I didn't record it. Not that I would have played it back.
You were so geeked out.
I was bouncing.
You were so excited.
I was so happy about, here's a challenge. How do we approach this type of challenge? Or here's a situation that happened. What do you think about that? And I love this stuff, right?
That's why I come to you.
So it was just so much fun. And I want to take and repurpose some of those questions that you asked, because I think they're real. They're valid.
They're juicy.
I mean, that's real stuff, right? Yeah. And so we can go over some of those questions. We'll make them a little generic.
Okay.
And then I'll talk about the advice or the ideas that I had. And then you can talk about, if you want to, if that problem's been resolved or not.
Yeah.
We can talk about how that happened. So
cool.
You want to talk about the first one?
Right. So, the question that I had was, what do I do when the team is stuck estimating numbers and sizes? So they were getting really hung up on a 2 versus a 3 or a 5 versus an 8. And what does it really mean? Is it in time? Is it effort? I don't know what to do. I don't know how to estimate it. These numbers are freaking me out.
Yeah.
So I said to Cory, I don't know what to do.
And I mean, the best advice I gave you, I think, was to go back to what you were doing earlier when you were working with me, is go back to your scale and just take the points, take the numbers, take everything, take the context out of it other than the story and the stories that they finished before. And then take that story and say, is the current story that we're estimating bigger or smaller than that one?
So let me tell you what happened, what actually happened. So yes, that's what you told me to do. The problem with that is that they weren't estimated prior to my arrival. They weren't estimating the Fibonacci sequence. So their estimates, I don't really know what they meant. They did them in t-shirt sizes.
Okay.
So what I did was, instead of taking your advice, and I still like your advice, and I will go back to that. But what I did was I took this t-shirt sizes that they're used to, extra small, medium, large, etc., and I equated points to it. So I said to them, okay, when we're grooming, think about in your mind what's the t-shirt size, and here's the points that equate to your t-shirt size. So then they said, oh, it's a small, and they throw out a 2. And that's how we kind of got through it. Yeah. So they now equate t-shirt sizes with the points.
And that's okay.
It worked for me.
It's fine. I mean, if it works, it works. And part of it is you leave it up to the team. If they want to estimate in t-shirt sizes or points or farm animals, you let them do that.
Sure.
Because ultimately, as a product owner, we're just going to figure out a way to translate that into a velocity calculation.
Well, what was happening before when they estimated the t-shirt sizes, it was giving an average. And some of the numbers that would pop up was a 4. And I'm like, there's no 4. I refuse to use a 4. I just don't want a 4.
Okay.
Because I was not trained to use 4. 4 does not exist in my world.
There is no 4.
There is no 4 in my world of pointing. So I said either we make all the 4s a 5, because 5 exists.
That's right. It's not a 3.
Or we take your t-shirt sizes and we equate it to the Fibonacci sequence.
And the reason that the reason I told you that, to take the points away and to take it, is because it doesn't matter. It's just, is this bigger or smaller than the other one? Whether the other one was pointed or not is irrelevant. It's just bigger or smaller. And if you have multiples of those, then you start to triangulate things. And then when the team gets comfortable with going, oh, I see how these are displayed on our scale, where we've got this one in the middle and we've got these other ones that we've worked on, and we see that they're bigger and smaller. That's when we start to say, okay, let's call anything in this area small or 2 or something like that. And then you start to build that.
Yeah, I think it was really good advice. And I did create a baseline for them. So I do have that along with my little t-shirt sizes to points ratio.
Yeah, that's the reason estimation is such a touchy topic, because people get stuck on, well, do I need to call it numbers? Do I need to go t-shirt sizes? Do I need to talk about time or complexity? It's never about time as far as the story estimation goes. It's always about complexity. But there is some element of how long is this going to take?
Right.
Not time-wise, but complexity-wise.
Yeah.
It's a very complex thing. It's going to take me longer.
Or it's super easy. I just have to do it a million times.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So you do have to take time into account as well.
Yeah. So that's the first question. I really like that one.
Yeah, that was
What about
fun.
the second one?
So what to do if the team is directed to pick up tasks that are not in the first story? So I had team members that would pull, so they're looking at the board and, it's prioritized from the highest value down to the lowest. And I had team members that were picking from the middle of the board. And I'm like, nope. We go top down.
Do you have a work in progress limit? Did I ask that? I can't remember.
You didn't ask that, and we don't. And this is something that I'm struggling with as well, because one of my teams would much prefer to put one developer on a story and let them own that story instead of putting multiple developers or multiple team members on the story to get it across faster.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to change that view of how things need to be done.
Yeah.
Because in my world, we swarm. We get the first one done.
Absolutely.
We get the second one done. We get the third one done. And we do it as a team because we're all responsible for this work being completed. It's not Cory's story is this. Oh, that rhymed. Cory's story is this, and he's ultimately only responsible for this story. And therefore, I have 4 developers. I've got 4 work in progress.
Yeah.
So
that's many waterfalls.
So my point is baby steps.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing about that was, and I've seen this several times when you're starting with new teams or you're starting with, you're trying to do your transitions to Agile, is you'll see some managers come in or some architects come in and say, hey, I really want you to work on that thing.
Right.
And that's not what the team has set up to do. That's on there, but it's not the first thing because it's not the highest priority. It's not the biggest business value for that sprint. So the managers come in and start changing things, which is bad. And one of the things that I think were really interesting about that problem was the manager and the product owner hadn't talked about why they wanted them to do that. And that was the basic advice that I had was that manager and the product owner need to talk.
Right.
And the reason, because the product owner needs to understand what concern that manager has, whether it's a high risk item, whether it's a big technical thing that's going to take a while, then the product owner and the developer or the agile manager or somebody needs to sit down so the product owner can understand that. And if they want to, they can reprioritize that story to the top and have that worked on first. And I think that's the key is the product owner makes that call about what gets worked on in the value order because they do the prioritization. Now, the other thing that I told you that I really like is that if it's a high risk thing and the product owner says, no, I don't think it is a risk or I'm willing to take that risk. and it fails, let it fail.
Yeah.
Let it happen so that you can see, the project owner can see, the manager can see, and the team can see why it was necessary to raise that as an issue and what happened when it didn't get addressed. So either you got lucky or you didn't and something happened and now you have to deal with it. But now the product owner knows the next time somebody tells me that this is a high risk issue or this is something that's going to take a long time, even though it's not the most high priority business value thing I could work on, I need to put that first or second so that we can get it done early.
Yeah, I agree. While you were talking, I like that too. While you were talking, I was thinking about something else because, you know, we say that, you know, you need to pick from the top down. Mm-hmm. You know, you start with the highest value, you work as a team, you get that story done, etc. Right. So I get pushback, from developers who, you know, say, well, wait a minute, I'm not a front end UI guy. I'm back end guy. Yeah. You know, or the front end person's like, I don't do back end, I do front end. You know, so then you have to really, and this kind of goes to the next thing, which is prioritization. Yeah. Because then you have to think about, all right, well, I have these particular people that specialize in a certain thing, and how am I going to distribute the workload so that it makes sense to their skills? Yeah, I think the first part of that is everybody on the team. If you're working with a feature team, then you've got UI, backend, designers, testers, whatever else. Right. The other people, so if you're a backend developer and there's a UI story, then ideally in a team, you should be learning a little bit about UI so that you can help. Now, you're not going to do that all yourself, probably. But again, we're a product owner, so we're not going to tell them how to do it. But we want them to pair so that they can learn to do these things together, or they can learn more about their role. If all you want to be is a back-end developer, then please go work for a company where all you're going to be doing is back-end development, because that's not what, as an agile shop, we should be doing. We should be building cross-functional teams that are learning and working together. So if you can have that, that's great. If you can't have that, then you start talking about, okay, then do we have component teams? Do we have people that only work on certain stories, which sucks? Right. So you have to find a way to work through it. But I think the other question you asked me was about the prioritization. Yep. So how does a product owner prioritize stuff? Right. And it was very interesting because there were some ideas about dependencies. The question you had was about dependencies specifically. Yeah. So the first two things that I came out with other than dependencies was, is this something we should be working on right now? Is this the highest value thing we could be doing? Value. That's the first thing that you use for prioritization. Yeah. Do we have the resources to do this? Right? So do we have all the UI, back-end, front-end, developers, designers, whatever else that we need to do this? Can we complete this story with the resources we have now? If we do, then great, go ahead. If we don't, then I'm going to prioritize that until we do have those resources. So that's the other thing. Then you start getting to dependencies. So we try not to have dependencies on stories, and we try not to have dependencies on teams with each other. But sometimes those things happen. So how do you go through that? So the first thing I think is intra-team dependencies. So I'm on a team. I can't do anything till that guy does his thing, right? That's not great. Is there a way that we can, so if I'm a back end or a front end developer and I'm waiting for the other one to, or we're starting at the same time. Let's, because that's a better example. Yeah. So I'm a front end developer. I start working. That guy's a back end developer. He starts working on day one of the sprint. So we're both working, but we're not going to be able to talk to each other, our pieces, until the other one's done, really. So what do you do in that case? Well, I could wait until he's done, or I could mock something out. I could stub it out. I could use some type of dummy service that when that piece is there, I'll just remove that bit of code and it'll call it. So again, not to get into the how, but I've seen people do this. I've heard coaches talk about and developers talk about, oh, we can just mock that service out and when it's ready, we'll connect to it. Mm-hmm. So that they don't have to not do anything until that thing's ready. They can progress. They can build the UI or they can build the back end. And then whenever that connection needs to be made, it's very simple to do that. But in the meantime, they've developed their unit test. They've written their code. They've done the things that they need to do, as part of that story. So when those pieces are ready, it's just a quick integration. Boom, they're done. So mocking, stubbing, all those types of things are things that developers can do and testers can do. Because remember, the testers are actually starting to write tests. Right.
as soon as the story starts being developed. So they're going to have to write some testing stubs in order to get their testing done. So all that's possible as far as intra-story dependencies. And then we get into, okay, well, this team can't do their thing until that team's done with their thing.
Right.
That's the hairy one.
Right.
So, yeah. And again, are you working as feature teams? You're working as component teams. Component teams, that's probably the norm. Feature teams, that's not the norm. And when you have that in feature teams, you either have teams that work together. Again, you can stub those things out. You can mock those pieces that you need from the other team, so that, and understand that I'm going to have to work with this team, both to understand what they're doing, and when they're done, I've got to connect to them. So those two teams have to communicate a lot. They have to communicate better than they would normally. But that's the reason. If that's the highest value thing and you have the resources, then you have to figure out a way to do that.
Yeah. We also have to consider the size of the story too.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want to want a large story, say a 5 or an 8 point story, to be put at the very bottom if you want to get it done within that sprint. You're going to want to move it up so that the tester has time to test it. And if there's any bugs found, you have time to fix those bugs.
That's a conversation the product owner has to have.
You have to look at the size of the story. We didn't include that in the prioritization, but that's part of it as well. So there's a lot of things you have to balance against when you're prioritizing the sprint and what gets worked on when.
Right. So I really like those questions, and that was fun.
Wasn't that fun?
So I like those real type questions of going, man, this is a hard, sticky situation. How do we do this? Or what ideas do we have about this? Cause it's going to be different, right? So the suggestions that we give are not going to solve your problem, but they may give you an idea, that your team can solve that problem themselves. Yeah.
There's definitely not a one size fits all approach to these answers.
Right.
It depends on so many variables.
Right.
But it's good conversation to have, and it's food for thought.
It is. It's fun too. I like this stuff. So.
I know. I do too.
All right. So, Kim Andrikaitis.
Yes, Cory Bryan.
This is your last show.
My last show.
Now, you haven't pimped it out yet.
I haven't.
But I'm going to let you do it now, and I want you to do it now. So your store.
My store.
That you're doing on your little craft thing. God, I said it again. I specifically said, don't say little.
That cute little paper craft thing that you do.
The very nice business that you're setting up and running and driving yourself crazy with.
Yes.
With fun.
Yeah, it's good
Making
times.
your own room and going to shows.
That's right.
Tell people about that.
So I created a company called Paper Cuts. And first of all, a little background. I'm actually a scrapbooker. I'm a total old woman nerd scrapbooker. I started scrapbooking, I think.
I've often thought of you as an
old woman nerd scrapbooker. I started scrapbooking, I don't know, years ago when my husband and I would take trips. I'd come back and I'd create these amazing scrapbooks, and that was kind of my creative outlet. And one day, laying in bed awake with insomnia, I thought, how can I make money at this? Cause I'm actually really good at it. I should bring you scrapbooks. I'm really good at it. And it dawned on me that not everybody could scrapbook, but people do appreciate a scrapbook page. Mm-hmm. So I thought, all right, what would be kind of cool is if I take kind of common events and create an 8x10 scrapbook page where people can post a 4x6 picture. So maybe a scrapbook page of, I don't know, mom and me, or, or family, or birthday, my dog, or whatever. So that's kind of where the whole idea originated. So I started creating these framed scrapbook pages, and they've since now morphed into cards, into little tiny framed, I do like a North Carolina with a heart where the Raleigh is. But it's really cool stuff. I love doing it, and I do craft shows, craft fairs. I do custom orders. So a lot of people send me pictures of the nurseries or the babies, and then I'll do a custom piece for them, including, the decor of the baby's room or the baby's gender or whatever else. So that's what I've been doing for the last year, and it's kind of starting to take off.
That's good.
I just, got a nice fat order, for a realtor who wants to give some of these pieces out to her clientele, for when they buy a new house from her.
Very cool.
So that's been really great. So, I don't have a web page yet where you can actually buy online, but that's my goal for 2016. However, you can go to Facebook/PaperCutsMZ. papercutsmz.com.
There you go.
CutsMZ.
And they're all handmade.
Everything's handmade. I custom design everything from scratch, cut it all out. The papers are layered. I usually include little gems and ribbons and texture and funky like papers and patterns. And, it's pretty cool. And, I started doing origami, Christmas crane ornaments.
Okay.
Which are so super cute.
Very cool.
God, they're adorable. Anyway, so go check out CutsMZ.
Yeah. So that's what you're going to be spending a lot of your free time on.
Yeah.
See, Kim creates her own company and I create a podcast.
Yeah. We're creators.
I love creating stuff.
I do
so
too.
It's fine.
It's very exciting.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
And, go check it out and see if you want something from Kim.
Buy stuff from me.
Yeah.
But I really hope that, you're able to get yourself a fabulous co-host. You got some people lined up?
Well, we will continue to do things. So as Kim departs us, I will continue to do the show every other week like we have been. Right now, it's going to be me talking about a topic, and then the next show will be a guest. So I've got some guests lined up.
Good.
And we're going to talk. If you want to be a guest,
let me know. I want to come back as a Scrum Master guest.
Okay.
Because now I'm Scrum Master full time, my new position.
Yeah.
So I want to come back as Scrum Master and we can talk through product owner Scrum Master stuff.
Okay. Cool.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So we're going to do that until I can find something else, and we'll change up the show a little bit to make it more adaptable. So that's fine. Version 2.0 of Deliver It.
Version 2.0.
There you go.
And you never know. I may miss you and be like, I want to get it. Let's do another show.
Or you may want to start your Scrum Master podcast.
I think I'm good for podcasts for a little while.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kim, for 20 episodes and putting up with me.
This has been fun. I've
this.
thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been awesome.
Good.
Yeah. Yay.
Keep listening.
Keep listening to Cory.
All right.
He's got lots of things to say.
And for that, it's time for this. Now, these words are our own and are not endorsed or representative of any company or organization. You can find me online at Is Cory Bryan on Twitter or infrequently blogging, and I have an idea for a blog post.
Oh, good.
At don'tYellAtMe.wordpress.com. And Kim, if you want to
still reach me.
You can still send her a note. I'll get it to her.
Yeah.
I'll be nice.
Or you know where to find me on Facebook.
That's right. And we just delivered episode 20, the Big 20.
Big 20.
Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope you join me next time.
Join Cory next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.